New arrow day. I'm very excited. Talk about some new arrows that I just got. New arrow day is almost as good as new bow day. So what I'm rocking now, these bad boys. So why did I swap arrows? This little video here is going to talk about my arrow swap and why I'm doing that, and just talking about arrow spine, dynamic spine, just kind of a brief overview, a little bit of arrow tuning, just really hopefully helping somebody out who's trying to figure out what the heck arrow I should buy. So this is my arrow journey. So these are what I'm going to be using for the 2025 hunting season. So the previous arrows I was using were my full-length gold tip traditionals. I love the full-length gold tips, it was 400 spine. So with spine, the higher the number, the weaker the spine. So what is a spine? We can start there real quick. So a spine, get my bear shaft out, is how much the arrow bends. So when you shoot an arrow, it will not just shoot straight off the shelf. Okay, what happens is called an archer's paradox, and what that means is when you shoot off the shelf or shoot an arrow at all, the arrow is going to bend mid-flight. I think the best representation I've seen in this in cinema is the movie Brave. That Pixar movie, awesome movie, but also it has just an incredible scene with the archer's paradox and the arrow in slow motion. And I think that is a big misconception in archery, that the arrow just flies like a dart. And a lot of the times it looks like that, but in slow motion, it is making that bend. So go back to arrow spine. If you were shooting a weaker spine, aka when I say weaker, I mean something that bends more, stiffer, doesn't bend as much. If you have a high pound bow shooting a weaker spine, the arrow is going to bend a lot more. And the problem with that is now you can start having some tailing issues, meaning for a right-handed archer, my arrow is going to want to start to kick out. So if you notice on a bear shaft, I'll explain bear shaft and fletching in a minute, but if you notice your nock is kind of pointing out left as a right-handed archer, that's a good indication you have a weak spine. So when I had my fletched arrows, I would shoot them and I didn't really notice that. I didn't really notice a kick left. I would notice a little bit of movement when I was flying, but I didn't notice a kick left. And that's because the fletchings, their job is to correct that flight. It's really incredible how much they can correct. Like, I really didn't notice too much of a problem until I started bear shaft tuning. So why do I care? I mean, if my fletched arrows, I have a good grouping, why does it matter? Well, with these weaker arrows, if it's kicking out to the left so hard that my fletchings are constantly trying to correct it, then the impact is going to be a lot weaker kinetic energy wise than if it was a perfectly tuned arrow and it was coming in like this, right? And why that matters is, in a hunting sense, I want to make sure that I have good penetration and my shot is ethical. So I want as little issues with arrow flight as possible. There's going to be some, because I'm probably not going to fine tune it absolutely perfectly, but I'm going to get it very, very, very close. And so I really didn't like the fact that I was kicking out left. So that is the basic overview of weak spine. If it was kicking out to the right when I shot a bear shaft, it would be a stiff spine, aka it's not bending enough. So you could see some accuracy issues. We obviously talked about penetration being a factor as well. So why I swapped arrows instead of just changing. So if you have a arrow that's too weak, you actually can do things to affect the spine. We call it dynamic spine. That's what I really care about, the dynamic spine. So if you cut down an arrow's length, I have full length here, I mentioned that earlier. If I were to cut down my 400 spined arrows, if I were to cut down the length a little bit, that could stiffen that spine, the dynamic spine. The number would still be 400, but just because that number is 400, I'm really talking about how it shoots out of the bow. That's what the dynamic spine is how it actually performs out of the bow. A lot of things can adjust that. We talked about cutting down length. I didn't want to do that. I'll explain that in just a minute. You can also reduce tip weight, which, if any traditional bow hunter heard the term reduced tip weight, I think they cringe a little bit. It's just not something you want to do. You want to have a high FOC heavy arrow. So reducing tip weight wasn't really a big thing for me. I didn't really want to do that. You can also add weight to the end of the arrow, like towards the nock. If you add weight up front, it can weaken the arrow. If you add weight in the back, it can stiffen the arrow. Again, the dynamic spine. So you can add a heavier nock, like a luminock. Those are awesome. They light up. They're mechanical. So if you're hunting at night or in the morning, early in the morning, it lights up after you shoot it, so you can kind of follow that arrow. So, and then you can also add these wraps, which I have on here. So that can help stiffen the dynamic spine. Well, I did add an arrow wrap to my old setup. It didn't stiffen it up enough, and the Luminox I don't actually have yet, but I don't think that would have stiffened up enough either, because it was shooting pretty weak. So why did I just swap to new arrows? Well, I didn't want to cut the length down, because when I shoot, I do like to gap shoot, and I do reference the tip of my arrow, and that affects my what's called a point on distance. So when I'm aiming at a target, if I put, like, let's say I'm at 10 yards, okay? If I aim and I put my arrow right at what I want to hit, my arrow is going way over the target, because my point on is about 35 yards. So anything under 35 yards, when I'm referencing that point tip, like when I'm aiming down this point, I will have to put it below the target by a little bit, and that's called gap shooting. So now I'm jumping around everywhere. But my point is, I didn't want to reduce the arrow weight or arrow length, because if I do that, then my point on gets bigger. And in a hunting sense, I'm not taking shots at 40 yards. I want to take shots at 20 and under. So I want to reduce my point on as much as possible. So I like the full length. Okay, I didn't want to reduce tip weight either. So I actually want to go the opposite. I want to increase weight. So instead, I bumped up to 340 spine, gold tip traditionals. I kept it full length. My old arrows, the 400 spines, and I'll probably have text somewhere, were 530 grains total. So that's how much my entire arrow weighed, with 200 grains up front. These bad boys are like javelins now. When my fully fletched ones, they're coming in at 620 grains with 250 grains up front. So I went from a weak spine, lighter arrow, lighter FOC, which is front of center mass, which helps with penetration. That's a whole nother subject. But I went from a lighter arrow, a weaker arrow, to a heavier, stiffer arrow that shoots better. This is a perfect situation for me. I'm very excited for these bad boys. They bear shaft tune pretty solid. There's some inconsistencies here and there, but I overall very much like them. So really excited about these new arrows. But I wanted to also mention in this video, lots of things I wanted to talk about, but one thing I really want to mention is bear shaft tuning. Why did it take me so long to swap arrows, or to change my spine, or to fix it? Well, I really think that when you're starting out as an archer, I think there are so many factors that you have to consider. You have to learn how to shoot form. You have to learn anchor point, how to hold the bow, how to draw back with your back tension. You need to learn how to aim. You need to learn, or instinctive. You need to learn. There's so many things, right? And I think if you throw arrow tuning in that mix, I think that is a recipe for disaster, because there are so many things that I even noticed today that can affect your bear shaft and can affect your arrow tuning, such as if you have a pluck, or if your hand pops out from your face, or if you creep and collapse, or you don't have the same exact anchor every time. That'll change how much poundage you're pulling, which will affect the dynamic spine. There are so many things and inconsistencies that can happen with arrow tuning that I feel like when you're learning how to approach archery for the first time, or you're just a newer archer, or just still getting comfortable with your form, because for traditional archery, it can take years of practice. I don't think you should worry about the fine tuning of the arrow spine. Now, should you care about what spine you use? Absolutely. They have every website of these arrows, like Gold Tip has a great one. I'll post a picture of it. They have an arrow spine chart, which is a very rough, good starting point, where it'll say, like, on the left side, it'll say point weight and poundage. And then on the right side, it'll just say the length of the arrow, and then you just connect where you're at, and it'll show you the spine. That is a great rough starting point. And honestly, until you get to fine tuning, that works perfect. So I would say, if you're a new archer, you're just getting into this, and you're like, how do I tune my arrows? Do that chart, focus on your form, and just focus on getting into consistency. I mean, consistency is key. Doing the same thing the same way every time is so key. So just keep learning how to do that, keep learning how to shoot. And then once you start getting pretty good groupings at 10 yards, 20 yards, heck, even getting good groupings at 30, 40 yards, then okay. I would say the 30-yard mark is where I like to say, let's rip the fletchings off. Let's see what we got. I don't think, if you can't group at 25, 30 yards, and you're just starting out, 20 yards even, I don't think it's really worth it to bear shaft. That was just me. Point is, I mean, the distance thing doesn't matter. I guess I should take that back. Really, the key is, until you have a consistent form that you're actually confident with, that you are doing every single time, I wouldn't worry about ripping these fletchings off personally, just because I think there's so many things that you're trying to handle and juggle as an archer, just starting out in the beginning stages, that I just think that's going to be overwhelming and can set you up for disaster. They talk about paper tuning. I do that as well. I do that at like 8 yards, but that's a snapshot of what is going on with the arrow, so I don't look too much into that. That's kind of just the final tune. The bare shaft tuning is the best. What you're looking for bare shaft tuning is a consistent grouping, and then your bare shaft lands within there. I'm going to make another video kind of going over that as well. But that's what I wanted to talk about today, my new setup. I'm very, very excited. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to help follow me on the journey, see how these arrows do this fall. Appreciate it, guys.